Welcome, Carm Capriato, the Service Aftermarkets Podcast Pioneer, with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey everybody, welcome Carm Capriato Town Hall Academy. I have one heck of a show today, a great mastermind panel. The word mastermind, I was told, was given to us in the industry by my friend Greg Bunch, and he'll show up here in a minute and either accept that accolade or dispute that with me. I don't know. So good to have you all here. We're going to talk about an SWOT on our industry, and we have done shows, everyone, on SWOT, individual SWOTs and business SWOTs. We will make sure we put the link in the show notes so that you can further track all the stuff that we do as it comes to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Hey, let me first of all, thank you all for being here. If it wasn't for you, we've been doing this 9 years ago. We continue to rock this world of automotive aftermarket business acumen podcasts for 9 years, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you all so much. And thank you to our great sponsors. Let's face it, your shop management system is the most critical tool in your shop. Napa Tracks will move your shop into the SMS fast lane with on-site training and 6 days a week support and local representation. 6 days a week support. Find Napa Tracks on the web at napatracs.com. AutoFix Auto Shop Coaching will help you shift your gears and redefine success. Imagine your business not just meeting, but exceeding every goal. On the web at autoshopcoaching.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. A team. I want to welcome my great team here. As I mentioned, Greg Bunch is here, President Aspen Auto Clinic, 6 stores, maybe soon to be 7, and president of Transformers Institute, and a person who told me at Vision this year that he came up with the mastermind thing.
Well, I'm going to give Napoleon Hill credit for coming up with the mastermind concept and Think and Grow Rich, but I do think I was the one that brought it to the automotive industry in the spirit of Napoleon Hill, which was a collaborative mastermind style. Even though other people call things mastermind, that's really the heart of it, is the collective wisdom, knowledge, and experience of everybody getting together and working towards the greater good of their society, business, whatever that is, health, right? There's different masterminds in there. But yes, I think the true Napoleon Hill mastermind is a concept I brought to the industry about 7 years ago. So
well,
thanks for giving me the credit.
Thank you, Napoleon and Greg, for that. I appreciate that. Andy Fiffick is with us, President Rad Air, Complete Car Care and Tire Centers in Cleveland, a 10-store franchise. Hi, Andy.
How you doing, guys?
Glad to have you here. Andy's also chairman of MAX, the Mobile Air Climate Systems, a great organization. In fact, I was honored to give the keynote presentation this past end of January. Loved it. Was there with the studio. We recorded some incredible episodes, Andy. Oh my God, they were so good. Hopefully you've heard them all.
Unfortunately, as you know, I had my knee replaced 1st of January. So that's the first MAX event I've missed in 20 years.
Wow.
But
it happens.
Simply couldn't go.
It happens. A new knees setting that lift for how many years?
Too many.
I know.
There's a lot of other dumb things along the way that
we have to admit when we get older that we've maybe abused our body occasionally. Warning. Also with us is Brian Sump, President Avalon Motorsports, a German auto experts company, and Urban Auto Care, 5 locations, Denver, Colorado. Hey, Brian.
Hey, I'm good to see you guys. Blessed to be with you this afternoon.
Yeah. I tell you, it's been a while that I've had you on. I thank you all so much for coming on. Look at SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Every once in a while, I come up with these wild ideas that we should do an individual show on, looking at yourself. And then we've, of course, done ones on your own business. I've personally done them for companies, and I love the interaction that I end up getting. And of course, one of the greatest things of a SWOT, you've got these 4 elements of SWOTs, but sometimes we forget about the 5th most important element of an SWOT, and that would be actionable strategies. And the beauty of putting all the SWOT up on a board and then looking at each of them individually and then rating them A, B's, or C's, you find your strategic plans or the things that you need to do to maintain and or survive, they're all up there on the board. So we're going to talk about the industry here, and we're going to start with you, Andy. One of the things that you had as you have thought about what one of our strengths as an industry is that we've got to be nimble.
I think our side of the aisle, and I'll call dealership network type mechanics, that group, than our group, the aftermarket group. I think we're way more nimble in that dealership work. And our group is so much more quick, quick on a draw to be able to diagnose things in that. When you're doing pattern failures all the time, you're working on the same make and models all the time, you're not exercising your brain enough. In our industry, I'll take any one of our guys up against anybody that's at a new car franchise to fix any car, because we're doing a Toyota, we're doing a Volvo, we're doing a Honda, we're doing a Chrysler, we're doing a Ford, and they all may be in for emission controls. All of them's different, but really, are they? When you get that sixth sense about working on a multitude of vehicles for the same type of problem, I think you just become that more nimble and quick at being able to think on your feet than any other group.
Yeah, I've got to second that, Andy. I started in the industry as a technician, and I remember I was 23 years old, and we had hired a new master technician at a German shop I was working at, and he was a Honda. He'd worked at the Honda dealership, and he literally brought in this huge like cardboard box and all full of parts. I'm like, "What is that?" He goes, "Oh, this is all my test parts." I mean, it was like a full like 3 foot by 3 foot box of parts. There was an old Volkswagen van that wouldn't run, and I got out my trusty LED test light. About 2 minutes, realized that the coil was open, but he struggled and struggled for 3 hours and could not figure it out. And I was like, wow, that's what a dealership, like all they do is swap parts. And I was thinking, okay, one day when I retire, I'll go be a parts swapper. Now I know there are some really good high level technicians at the dealerships as well, where I don't think anybody's saying that, but yeah, I would definitely say you put up an independent repair shop, good technician against anybody, because they have to think out of the box. They have to be able to know multiple systems and not necessarily rely on pattern failures. So I agree with you there. And it's what's frustrating, right? As we're talking about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, one of the weaknesses is we don't do a good job as an independent repair shops of getting that message out to the general public. And so they continue to be brainwashed to think, oh, well, I got to take my new car or newer car back to the dealership because they're the only ones that have the technology and the training for my car. I'll bring my old car to the shop, to an independent shop, but my new car, for either for warranty or for expertise, think that they still have to go back to the dealership. And we just haven't put a good unified front together as independent repair shops to say, hey, that's not true. Hey, we have really, really good technicians, and here's the proof.
I agree with you. The weaknesses are probably our biggest weaknesses is we don't work together enough that we should in industry. We don't have that lobbyist either per se. That's their.
One of the things that I want to do. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
I think you need more to do. I think you could take that role for us, right?
I was thinking the same thing about you, Greg. Actually, let's give it to Brian. He doesn't say anything yet. Yes.
Yeah. The quiet guy is the low man on the totem pole. I get it.
Let me echo something that Greg just said about we don't tell people enough. Well, I just wrote a huge declaration on the rise of the mechanical and technology specialist. And if we were out there, and again, I'm going to thank you so much.
It looks like that.
Yes, it does, Greg. Thank you. Thank you. I will send you $20 in the mail. Hopefully you can get to Mexico. Before it gets diverted, then they take half. If we are saying to our clients that we hire some of the best technology specialists to work on these computer-driven vehicles, that's going to have an outside and I think a profound effect on the image of our industry. And so if you've not gotten your hands on a copy of The Rise of the Mechanical and Technology Specialist, it's very simple, remarkableresults.biz/rise. Get it, download it, read it, watch the video that's also on that page. And I think it's going to change. And in fact, it could be an element in your strategic plan as an SWOT. What can I do to better market myself to the public and gain more share? Because it's to the point, we work on everything and we're good at what we do. We are an industry. We are a skilled trade industry that, in my opinion, is not respected enough. And I think that's a strength that we have. I think it's a weakness. I think it's an opportunity. And we could make it a threat if we don't do something about it.
Yeah, I always try to train our group, we should be respected just like doctors and attorneys, physicians, dentists. There's no reason we should not have the same respect at that level. And unfortunately, our predecessors and still a lot of us in aftermarket industry today just don't respect ourselves enough. And, maybe we need to be a little bit more arrogant about, but to Greg's point, there has never been a unified front to tell the public how good the aftermarket is. Dealership network does it all the time. A lot of our big box franchisers do it all the time. As the smaller guys, we do a terrible job. I think in our own stores, I would highly doubt Brian or Greg or anybody like us is not telling our clients how good we are by showing through example and the way our shops look and the way we act and the way our uniforms look and being able to explain to the client, show them, the equipment that we're using. We do it through those kind of things, but there's no unified campaign to go out to market us as how good we are.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're talking about being nimble. One of the things I love about being an independent shop operator is that we're free market capitalists at the core. We don't have a franchise or big box putting us into these guide rails, right? We literally get to make choices as we so wish. And I think that's extremely freeing. And the flip side of that though is I guess those of us on this call, we have multiple locations. We're starting to experience the benefits of scalability and marketing. But as you were just saying, I think, Andy, is one of the downsides we don't have is that we don't have that gigantic reach with big television or big mass marketing branding efforts. And so we get to paint the picture in very delicate strokes as well, though, in our messaging versus big broad strokes that some of the big box marketing might do. So there's two sides to that coin.
Well, Andy brought up a good point, right? That part of it is self-induced. It's the way we look at ourselves. And then, of course, there is some, we have to own the fact that as an industry over the last 60 years, that we put a black eye on ourselves too. It's not that some of that reputation has not been earned, but this is not a Transformers commercial, but just people ask me all the time, what's with the name Transformers? And it's about transforming the automotive industry, but it starts with how the shop owner themselves look at themselves as a professional, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur versus, well, I'm a mechanic that just happened to start my own business, and they're still in that technician mentality, and that's gonna come across. So there's nothing wrong, obviously, with being a technician. That's how I think a lot of us started. But moving into, hey, this is a legitimate career, this is a legitimate business. We have to transform our own mindset before we think that the outside consumer is even going to think about the way they look at us.
You know what? One of the things that I loved about what Andy had wrote to me about strengths, he says we have courage. Think about when the technician who wanted to start his own business, and so many of our legacy owners today were that, they had huge courage. Some of them took it and kept going and going, and some of them basically stopped and are living in a world of same old every day and wondering why they can't be successful. But courage, and we're bright and we adopt quickly. And I think that's a strength we should talk about.
Well, there's no doubt. Well, maybe the flip of courage is stupidity. I remember going to open my first shop and I had to borrow $55,000 from my mom and dad. And I sold my truck. I sold my wife's car. I cleaned up bank accounts. That takes a lot of courage to stop your life, go in debt. Now, of course, this is a long time ago. So that'd be, let's say, $500,000 today, which is an extremely amount of money. And that takes courage. But it also then, I remember, people say, oh, Andy's got it made. Look at him now. Well, there was 8 years when you started to shop. You didn't make any money, or you made barely enough money to survive on. You put all the money back in to grow the business. That's where it teaches you to be nimble too. It's like, oh, I got to get that one extra job in. I got to finish that job. I got to get that new piece of equipment so I can do that kind of work. I got to go to that training seminar so I can bring in that additional work. So it takes a huge amount of courage to do what we do. And I guess I don't understand why the guys that have that, why we don't have the self-respect that goes with it. There's so many in our industry that that are lacking that self-respect to really take their business to that next level.
Yeah. As I look back, I don't know, 17 years that I've been doing this, and I was an outsider, I came from out of the industry. Doug Grills and he always tells the story about the Ratchet and Wrench conference, and two guys raised their hand that were never in the industry. It was he and I. But 17 years later, I've been in it for quite a while. When I look back on it, I think every 4 or 5 years or so, it's like we're making another big wave of positive push across the nation, right? We're seeing more shops become more sophisticated, I think. And I think the way that shop owners, and maybe that's because of a bunch of resources like better training, parts vendors, and more conferences and things like that. And I think the industry as a whole just advancing in terms of the impression and things. But I agree, Andy, there's still, I mean, how many independent shops would you say are in the country? 200,000? What's the number? Something like that?
I think you're
Something
close.
like that, yeah. So we're a subset. All those people that follow CARM and that are going to these conferences are a subset of maybe 40 or 50,000. So maybe 25% of the industry. Maybe that's just major markets, or maybe it's small markets too. But I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that. It's cool though. I do see us advancing. It's just, we're certainly not as sophisticated as tech companies, and maybe arguably the dealership brands as a whole. I don't know. It's a good topic for debate.
So somebody could check my math here, but I just literally pulled up a statistic from one of our vendors that sent this report over saying that our estimated value of the U.S. auto repair industry is $116 billion. You divide that by 200,000. I don't know what the math is, because other statistics I've seen that the average shop in America does $650 to approximately $650,000 in revenue. And you talk about a fragmented multi-billion, $100 billion industry. It's really very interesting when you break it down to how much money that is in what we do, but yet how small each individual player for the most part is out of those 200,000 shops. As we talk about private equity and big business moving in, and not only, we all know, without naming names, right, some of the franchises that that don't really have the great reputation or that people would want to be a part of. But there's some other franchises out there in our industry that, for all intents and purposes, are doing a really good job. And they are on the forefront of changing the image of the industry in the independent world.
Yeah, there's no doubt there's a few players out there that's making us look good along with us. But it's the guys in the $650,000 shops that are just struggling because they haven't taken the time to build their image. They haven't taken the time to advance their education or that equipment or make their building look modern. When you got people driving around cars that are 50, 60, 70, 80,000, $100,000, heck, you could buy a pickup truck today that's $100,000. Are you going to pull up the ratty looking old shop and I'm going to have that person work on my $100,000 vehicle or $60,000 vehicle? So we got to look the part too, not only act the part. And if you go to any of the training clinics I go to, some of these guys need to brush up their image, even showing up to our events. It's a little bit scary. And the second half of that is, look at the age of all the guys showing up at those events. I was over at our WD at a training clinic last month. We go to one every single month they hold. Look at the guys there. I'm going to be 68 this year. And a lot of the guys are in my age group, in that group that I've been seeing at the same training clinics forever and ever. And how many, on that token, maybe not the right place, but you get the owners that aren't engaged, but yet they expect their employees to be engaged. If I'm sending my guy to a training clinic, I'm sitting next to him at the clinic. I want to set that example that this is as important to me as it is important to you. In fact, it's even more important to you, but it's still important to me because you're the guys turning the wrenches more. I'm not, but I need to be able to talk, understand it, and be able to know what education I need for my group.
I got to stop right there. I got to chime in on something, guys. It just happened to me last week. Let me just make an announcement that we've moved into weaknesses. Okay. We talked about strengths, and weaknesses is this whole aging out thing, and we're getting older, and maybe we're not committed to training enough, which is a weakness. So it was last week. I'm doing a pre-call with somebody that I'm going to be interviewing next week. And this individual works for a very large company and did 26 years in an independent. And I was chatting him, and I asked one of my most facetious questions that I always ask people. And I said, I talk to shop owners and I say, send your people to training? No, they won't go. Then I ask, who owns the business? Okay. And they want to slap me because I'm being so facetious and cocky, if you will, in the question that I have. And I said, so how did you, when you were the general manager of this large group, how did you get your people to training? And Andy, he says, I put him in the car and drove them. To your point, Andy, that you have to go and you have to be there with him. Even if it's at volt ohms and amps, Andy, and you're not interested, you can still catch something from that and discuss it with your people because you're doing management by walking around, right? Let's go back to Tom Peters from the 80s, In Search of Excellence. And management by walking around came from, I think it was P back in the 70s. If we don't want to be engaged with what we ask our people to do, no matter how big your company is, then it's a mistake. I needed to chime in on that training as a strength and as a weakness. And we have to own that, what you say.
Carm, I'm so glad you brought that up because as a training company, we have, for example, our 3-day sales mastery class. And yeah, it's geared obviously towards service advisors and managers because it's a lot of at the counter techniques. But I'm always pushing the owners like, you need to come. You need to sit next to your advisor and your manager. You need to find out if what we're teaching lines up with what you want.
Yeah.
Number one, so that if you hear something, now, obviously we say it's a buffet, so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but that's what happens. We've seen it over and over. Somebody sends a service advisor, they come back and they say, hey, I learned this cool thing. And the owners goes, well, that doesn't fit with our model. We're not doing that. And instead of doing everything else, they just throw everything away. There's the business model and then there's the accountability. Andy, can say, hey, Carm, I sat right next to you when Greg taught this. Why aren't you doing that? Oh, okay. Yeah. If Andy didn't know what I taught, he wouldn't even know what to hold that person accountable to. And then I think, like you said, it brings that culture to say, hey, I'm engaged in this. This isn't a set it, forget it kind of business, that I'm in the trenches with you. I'm learning this stuff with you. I'm staying on top of this too. But it's an argument, a discussion that I have with shop owners, be like, well, why should I go? I'm not on the front counter. And it's like, I keep got to saying the same thing, but whether it's management training, service advisor training, technical training, being involved with your people in that, I think that says this is important to me and it's important to you. So man, I'm really glad that message came out of this today.
Listen, let me support you in a very big way. Before I became a podcaster, I wanted to be a sales trainer in the distribution side. And as I reached out and talked to all of my friends in the industry, I said, you've got to send your people, but you have to send their boss. If you have a sales manager, if not you, to the seminar. Well, I can't do that. And the thing that I'm most worried about is if they invested their money and we were teaching them new, exciting, and different things on how to not sell stuff, but sell information, sell relationships, sell trust, then they came back and that you completely wasted their money because they're going to go back into the same habits that they had, which were none, because you're not paying attention and you're not leading them. So Greg, how you can't take your clients' money if they're not sitting next to their own people there, because they're going to go back and totally waste it because the accountability to the training that they got could never be valued.
It's the old adage, why should they care if you don't care? That's the way they're going to look at it. That's darn simple.
This is just a little bonus discussion. What you say, Brian?
You said, what would I say, Carm?
Yeah.
The little bonus. The little guy on the totem pole, he agrees with everything you guys just said. So.
No, are you kidding me? Oh, you are one of our smartest guys in the industry. Trust me. I know this.
You're so gracious. I just want to speak maybe to expound a little bit. The cultural aspect is kind of what we're talking about. And I think one of the most difficult things is to knock down the first brick in the wall. And in a certain business owner, let's say a technician's been at tech for 20 years and he opens a shop and maybe he has a good advisor, he's got a couple of techs, and it's just this feeling of feeling hostage, or taken hostage by our team members. And it's just you start with one brick and you knock one brick off the wall. And you start liberating yourself, the type of people that you can attract. And I've said this in the Transformers meetings, I said it from my national keynotes, that one of the biggest barriers to growth is being handcuffed from the mindset that high character, high performing people don't exist. And the second thing is not having a pipeline of people that meet that criteria. Because what happens is you're just going to allow that mediocrity, whether it's, hey, I don't want to go to training, or somebody that's not teachable, or somebody that is a cultural, what did Richard Flint used to call it, Greg, hyenas? I think he used to call them hyenas. So anyways, it's hard to get that flywheel rolling, if you want to use that analogy, but you just keep making consistent efforts and you keep ensuring that the people on your team match the values of the organization and where we're going in the direction and the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. And you start getting those people that want to take to training. You start to get to those people that have an uplifting attitude. You go after that diagnostic master that takes you 5 or 6 months to find, and you treat them like royalty, like you should be treated. But the hardest, sometimes for the shop owners, the hardest piece is that first brick. And it's just like any habit, right? Then knocking down another brick and that belief system. So I'm glad that you guys had brought that up earlier.
Yeah, it's a weakness, the attracting young talent, keeping them sticky, involved, engaged. And
It's one of the selling points that dealerships are offering to their technicians. Why would you go to independent shop? We offer you factory training. We'll be training you on EVs. We're training you on this, right? And so when you said the guy says, "Oh, I can't get my guys to go to training," it's the opposite because I hear dealership technicians, that is one of their biggest fears about moving from a dealer to an independent is how am I going to stay current? How are you going to train me? Obviously, that's the good ones that are interested in staying up on stuff.
As you guys were talking earlier about the dealership technicians, and Greg, you kind of commented a lot of them are parts hangers. They diagnose through grabbing parts in the part department, testing them that way. But yet a lot of independent shops we try to leverage that we have factory trained technicians in it's weird. It's like these opposing messages that we're giving out. And so I often wonder, I mean, like if people really knew, I'm sure the people on this recording for sure, if the people knew the caliber of techs that we had in the shop, and I think we all have these techs that some of the best ones are guys that never stepped foot in a dealership. But man, are they just amazing with the variety of makes and models that come in the door. It's kind of funny that dealership technicians want the training, and that a lot of the times the messaging isn't it that we offer this advanced level training.
I think we got to make sure we're not bashing dealership techs. They're just a different breed of what we are. And every dealership I know, and I'm fortunate to be friends with quite a few dealership owners that have been doing this forever. So you run into each other sooner or later. There's one or two great techs at almost every dealer. And then you have it filtered down from there, a little bit like in our shops too. You have the one or two go-to guys, and then your level 2s, C's, B's, whatever we want. But there's a lot of good guys at technicians too that I've had great relationships for, because there's some stuff we can't reprogram no matter what we do. I got a great relationship with BMW dealership guy in here. When I'm in trouble, I lean on him. They get a used car in, they don't know what to do with it. They're leaning on me. In the used car departments, they get a Toyota dealer that gets a Chevy in that he can't get auto climate to work. They're calling us. We have to go both ways. So I don't want to come across that we're bashing these guys. They're just a different breed. But when we look at our strengths, I do think we're much more nimble. We're much more broad-minded. We're much more agile, where we think outside the box a lot more than that group because their box is just so small.
yeah, you are so right, Andy. And I want to echo that. This is an open discussion on our industry as the aftermarket. Yeah, we do some comparisons to the dealerships, but they're going to always be there. We need them to sell the cars that we got to work on, right? So that's important. It's important that they're there. Hey, guys, strengths, weaknesses, we've kind of had some fun with that. Let's look at opportunity. And when you look at opportunity, a lot of the times, Andy, you think of the word change.
I love the word change. To me, change is opportunity. Everything that change, everybody hates change. So they don't want to get that new piece of it. They don't want to do it. I remember going to the first Max convention where they were selling YF machines. I ordered one from Robinair at the event. I still got a lock on the market at that one location for all the body shops, all the independents, everybody that never bought a YF machine. I'm doing 3 times more YF recharges for the aftermarket machine than any one of the other 9 locations because we're first to market with it. And they all had Radiator Garfield Heights. They got the machine. Those are the guys. They've been doing YF cars since they came out. To me, change is opportunity. I think I paid $7,000 for that first machine. It was not a cheap investment. We may have used it 10 times that first year, but every year 10 became 100, 100 became 200, and then it became 300 units we're doing for the aftermarket. So to me, change is an opportunity because most people's going to resist it. If we embrace it, we're first to market. I ordered a 2003 hybrid Escape. Ford didn't produce it. I got a 2005. 2 years I waited. We became the hybrid expert in town over that, owning that car and using it as a test mule and a training mule. To this day, we're known as the hybrid go-to shops in Cleveland because we were the first one that did it. So all this stuff that changes, we got all this advanced technology coming in with heat transfer today. You look at all electric vehicles, what's going to happen with heat transfer and all of this, when all that stuff starts to go bad, we're sitting in the catbird seat if you know how to work on it, because we get new car dealerships sending us air conditioners to fix that they can't fix.
Wow.
It's amazing. To me, change is opportunity.
Yeah, it's probably not coincidental that the O in opportunities follows the W in weaknesses. And I think we talk a lot about banding together as an industry. The reality is we all have businesses. And one of the things I love most about this industry is the friendship. And even in our own town, I've got some very close friendships that we technically compete with. But at the end of the day, every one of us has to think as though we can outcompete anybody. Doesn't matter if you're a dealership or a friend next door, right? I would hope we have that mentality. So all the things we just talked about are weaknesses: poor quality of branding, poor messaging, poor recruiting, poor retention, poor training. I look at all that and I go, man, so in a dark world, a little bit of light shines a lot, right? So in an industry that's really not got a great reputation, that a lot of unsophisticated operators, I look at that and go, man, ridiculous opportunity, right? Because a little bit more creativity, a little bit more thought and foresight, a little bit more effort, you make a lot bigger impact than a highly sophisticated, saturated, consolidated industry, right? You got it. I mean, it's incremental. You're making incremental strides above competition. But for us, we have an opportunity to make massive strides while hopefully inspiring some of these other operators to lift a little bit in the process.
Brian, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because the standard to just be satisfactory has dropped so much since COVID hit. Nobody expects anything on them anymore. They expect to spend more money. They don't expect to be able to have their vehicle serviced quickly. That's what COVID did. Everything. The restaurant chains, I don't know about where you guys are. Our restaurant chains are still running limited hours and limited seating capacity because they can't get enough dishwashers and people to work in the units. And I ran into a brand new restaurant. I sat down with my wife, we have dinner, and a guy come by checking. I said, "So the owner?" He said, "Well, I'm the managing partner." We start talking for 20 minutes, and he's telling me how hard it is him to get staff to open their brand new restaurant. And now he had to
Wow.
limit his hours in that. And he says, "Hey, well, anytime you want to talk, I want to bang your ear some more, Andy." But so our industry is not unique. But the point I'm making is we don't have to increase that much more to be that great, because the standard is so low. We call it the radar difference. We want our clients to experience the radar difference and show them we are different than our competitors on every aspect. And to me, I want to be better than the Lexus dealership, better than the Mercedes dealership, better than the BMW dealership, better than a Toyota dealership on how we do our client interactions and our quality control. On the shop has to look the part. These guys got to talk the part. They got to be able to educate the client, when they're selling them what needs to be done on their vehicle. It takes a lot of training and it takes a lot of forethought that a lot of the guys that were technicians that luckily became shop owners, they don't think about that kind of stuff all that much. And unfortunately, those are the guys that's falling away. Greg, do you have any updated information? I remember seeing a report about 2 years ago where since COVID started, we lost like 20,000 service bays in the country. So that's like a year and a half, 2-year-old report. So how many have we lost today? This
Yeah,
point?
the last report I saw was 6,000 shops closed their doors, but that probably is equivalent to your 20,000 days. But I talked to a executive at one of the big parts company. He goes, "Oh yeah, Greg, the number's a lot bigger than that now," but I didn't get an exact number. But I'm going to guess at minimum 10,000 shut their doors.
So, you look at opportunity, the fleet's growing, the mileage is growing on the fleet, and there's less service bays and there's less of us. I
Right.
think we have tremendous opportunity of us.
However,
So-
gentlemen,
Oh,
I keep hearing that the 3-week backup is no longer, and some are struggling with car count. And I'm not sure that car count is the number one most important thing to worry about. We have to pay attention right now to our economy and what people are spending on.
yeah. So I'm going to disagree with you, Carm. It is the most important thing, right?
Okay.
No matter what your percentages are, if you don't have a car to work on, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
As you guys know, I've been doing this a very long time. I have never had a great election year. Consumer confidence goes in the toilet during an election year because each side is telling the world how bad it is. And that guy gets in it, it's worse. And look where we are today with our choices. We strategize to try to overcome that this year by implementing some new policies and also implementing some new cutting edge technologies for advertising and marketing. And so far, it seems to be playing out. I'll let you know long term if it really played out because we're far away from election day. But car count is tougher. Cars are built better. They last longer. The new car manufacturers are telling people, you almost never have to service this thing. Look at the oil change industry. Unless the light comes on and tells them to change the oil, consumer totally forgot about that. And I'm sure all you guys are seeing cars come in with cam phasing issues and all that, and they're literally just low on oil. They might say you don't have to service it, but they don't also say, you should have that oil checked every 1,000, 2,000 miles. There isn't a day go by that we don't have cars come in with no oil shown on dipsticks. course, it's one of the first things we check, because heaven forbid you don't check and he goes down out the door after you did a brake job. Well, what'd you do? My car quit running, or my check engine light came on 3 minutes after I left here. Well, it's low on
Right.
oil. But if our industry doesn't take the time to at least check oil on every car, maybe we shouldn't be an industry.
I want to address something real quick, that going back to the barrier to entry. So on one hand, when I started 20, whatever, almost 25 years ago, there was a very low barrier to entry to getting into the shop, into the business. And I would say, depending on regionally where you're at, it's not a super high barrier to entry. If somebody wants to rent a $2,500 a month industrial space and tell their friends and family to come see them and roll their toolbox in, I mean, they can technically get started and be a shop owner. But I think we all know, Andy, you were talking about, the technology with hybrids and AC machines and reprogramming and all of these things technologically, not only the price of the equipment, but the men and women to be able to run that has created a very high barrier to entry as far as doing it right. And then we talk to our friends like Brian, and I've got some guys that are really strong in European cars, but Brian has a European shop, right? And so his level of not only customer service, but of equipment and training and technology has to be even really a step above too. And I remember as I was going through my metamorphosis from being a technician into a business owner, I was at the public library. My kids were grabbing books, and I grabbed this old book written in the 80s about the mindset of a CEO. And the guy was writing about that. He said, you don't want to get into a industry that's got a low barrier to entry and high profit. He goes, because it becomes a gold rush, everybody gets into it, and then you're either going to get regulated or it's going to get saturated. And so I remember that always stuck with me as I was thinking about the automotive industry. To do it and do it right is a high barrier to entry, right? If you're going to have a good location that's clean, that's beautiful, you've got good technicians, good equipment, you're going to have that image, you're going to be able to market yourself. That is a high barrier to entry to do, and not everybody's going to do it. And if it's harder to get good technicians, if it's harder to buy the equipment, then that means other people are not just going to jump and go do it and go, wow, I'm going to be in the auto business. It's low barrier to entry and high profit. High barrier to entry, if you do it right, it could be high profit. So I really think about that in a way of our opportunity, that when they say, gosh, it's so hard to get technicians, good. That means it's a high barrier to entry. Oh, it's so hard to get the right equipment. It's so hard to get the right training. Good. That means that those of us that can innovate and figure it out are going to dominate. So just a different way of looking at it than a fear-based, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive? No, that's what we got to ask yourself. How do we not only survive, but thrive and think futuristically and think strategically? And sometimes we got to pay the price now to be just like you did with the AC machine or buying the hybrid, being, hey, I'm going to be the first guy to do this, but it's going to pay off in the long run. And we will probably buy stuff and do stuff that isn't going to work, but that's going to happen too. I'm sure you got a couple stories on there too. Doesn't mean we don't do it.
Too many.
Let me let Brian sum up opportunities, and then I want to move on to threats. Any words, Brian, on opportunities that we have?
Yeah. A couple of comments I made in my email to you in advance of this was talking about, and maybe we'll get to this, but some of the consolidation that's happening. I still think there's tremendous opportunity there. While they have some advantages, maybe like we talked about in scalability and marketing and possibly even recruiting, they might have full-time recruiters. They might be able to pay higher multiples on an existing business and stuff. I believe what we're seeing in our market, we've had two key players in our market that have sold to private equity recently, and more that are coming down the pipe. Their top employees are moving over to our facilities, to our company. And so one of the downsides of intermediate or early phase consolidation, right, is you have to compete with some of these big pockets and some like that. But I'm also saying that family owned and independent operations, I believe, have again, an incredible opportunity to stand out in this industry as these bigger players and bigger brands get rolled up. They're going to be, there's high likelihood they become more transactional, and we can stand out even more as a high value, strong relationship based shop. So I just wanted to make that comment. I think there's a ton of opportunity there.
Brian, I think you hit the nail on the head. The M&A activity really seems to be heating up in our sector. They did it with the parts, and then they did it with the body shops. Now they're coming after our segment now pretty darn hard. But you're right. When the private equity gets involved, there's nothing in there about client service. It's all about the number. And I think some of the quality of service, I guess is the way I want to say, gets lost in the drive, the number. So I think that is a huge opportunity for us that stay in our lane and provide that personalized, great, caring understanding service that, yeah, we're going to keep rising to the top. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all falls out next year or two, because everything's cyclical. They're going to make their run at us. I know one of the private equity firms that owns 3 big different chains of all different stuff. I mean, they're in the car washes, they're in the quick lube, they're into the auto repair. I think that that private equity group's been sold 4 times since 2015. And every time you turn, it's a new group of people, and it's a new group of people that I got to get the numbers better than the last guy, or I don't have a job. And I actually were approached by one of those groups. I went on the interview. I went to their world headquarters, and literally they were bragging about how they were watching each store's performance on live screens. And they had somebody following up with the store going, "Hey, that Volvo that came in, I see you have an estimate for $1,000. And why isn't that one sold yet?" They literally had people in the room calling the manager at the store, wondering why he hasn't sold that one job. It's all about the number with them. And this group here, it's all about what the client needs. And that's going to be our huge advantage if we stay in that lane.
I'm so happy you brought that up because I am sitting on the sidelines. This is what I do in the industry, and I get all this great input. People call me all the time, tell me things, and I'm sitting here thinking, if the owner sticks around, sells the deal, takes a portion, of equity, are they being allowed to your point, Brian, Andy, Greg, to manage the client experience the way they used to, which made their company as valuable as it was? This isn't the proper time to talk about it, but maybe we all need to get back and bring some people that have already sold and ask some tough questions of them. What do you think?
I think it's I walked away from the deal because they wanted us to change our name, our identity, join their group. I took my whole life to build what we have. I'm not throwing it out the door.
Listen, just like you guys, I know we've become great friends in the industry that have done this deal. I'm not sure they would come on and speak to me about it because they're still in their deal. But I'm
or they're gonna be
curious as to
pretty
how
angry.
it's going. Pardon? What's
Yeah,
that?
I've been in the consulting world and having clients that have done this. Yeah, the conversations 6 months, 8 months, year and a half later, they're pretty upset. Like, they freaking destroyed my company. Yeah, I'm glad I got my check, but they get calls from their employees like, "How could you do this to me?" It's heart-wrenching.
All right. Well, we got to cover threats and on this thing. But I have to tell you, who's ever sitting with us, continuing to listen, 45 minutes in, I think you're just loving this because the conversation's been fabulous. Because we've gone down some rabbit holes, and it's fun to do that because I love to do that. Let's talk about threats, cost of doing business, age of our operators because of succession. Where is that going? Will the government get more involved in our business if we let them because we aren't paying attention to things? Andy, start us off.
Again, we have threats coming at us all. Just the constant change is a threat if you don't stay cognizant of being able to stay ahead of it. But the constant change is also, to me, the opportunity to always seek and change. So, yeah, if you look at it, that is a threat. We have constant change, availability of parts, availability of repair information, our guys aging out. There's enough threats there, but I don't think the threats outweigh the opportunity if we stay focused on how to handle them. Brian's
Yeah.
thinking there. I think he has a comment in there.
Well, it reminds
Right.
me, and I don't know if it's reminding him of the same thing, but Brian and I actually had a conversation about this a couple of years ago when Brian was, I think he went down a rabbit hole of the impact of electric vehicles and things like that to the long-term 10, 15, 20 years down the road, because Brian's a little bit younger than all of us here and thinking through that kind of thing, which he should be. We should all, that's part of being a CEO, is thinking strategically and thinking about the future. But back to what you said, Andy, there are so many things that we have control over and what we can change internally to stay ahead of the game. I think as an industry, probably as human beings, we tend to focus on everything out there that we can't change and what that could affect. Just like you said, the election. Maybe you've never had a great year at election, but what can we do differently during an election year in our marketing and our sales and our pricing, whatever that is? We know it's coming, right? You've been doing this longer than everybody. So just prepare for it. What does that really mean? That's what you're talking about. I think being strategic about what changes need to be made and being adaptable. So yeah, there are external threats. There's the right to repair. There's all of those things are extremely real. But as we've talked through this, really that becomes, we need to turn those threats into opportunities. And the first place to look is in the mirror in our own business.
Yeah. And, I'll add, and Greg, what Greg's referencing is we started getting calls from big private equity firms. That's more than 2 years ago. And there's a lot calling, right? So I think that's just a reality. My engineering mind is thinking, okay, knowledge breeds the ability to make strong decisions. And so I went on a deep search. I spent time with Chris Chesney. Of course, most of us know him. Guys like Mario Recchia, who is the senior VP at WorldPact forever, just really trying to understand, like, where are we going? Because we're making big investments. We've done 6 acquisitions. We generally do that. So we might take on some debt. But I mean, we're leveraging, like you said, Andy, we're leveraging everything to grow our businesses. And I needed some assurance to know that in 10 years, like if I'm paying off debt notes in 7 years or 10 years, if it falls on its face in that time or at the end of that road, then was it really all worth it? Right. And it's not just about money. It's about impact and serving and all that kind of stuff. But I could tell you the summary of that whole thing is that I could never have been more encouraged than I was after that long period of due diligence. I believe that there's such an incredibly ripe, at least 20-year run of combustion engine vehicles with minor advancements, more or less the industry that we know today. It's going to keep advancing, but I don't think that big private capital, I don't think dealerships, I don't think electric vehicles, big tire selling companies, I don't think any of that presents a threat that's going to prevent strong independent shop operators from making more money than we've ever imagined we were going to make.
I totally agree with you, Brian. I played the game. I went and listened to him because, there was probably a snowball chance, I was going to leave, but I used it as an opportunity to learn what that market's about, what they're offering, what's going on, what's their mindset, so I could better educate what's going on there. You're right. We're all getting the same calls. Matter of fact, I had one this morning again. I think if our government ever gets their head on straight, the true answer is hybrids followed up by hydrogen. That's really should be the path we should be going down more than anything. This push that they're doing, really never understood it. And to interfere with the free market by manipulating with big cash incentives, just to me, is not that's not pre-capitalism to me. Just nobody's going to go buy electric car. Well, I'll give you a $7,500 check. Oh yeah, I guess I'll go buy one. I mean, that's what we did to the industry. But now I think everybody's backing off now and going, well, maybe we need to rethink this a little bit more. The early adopters they've already done what they're going to do. And the real market is starting to show its face.
When it comes to the final big T, the big threats, I will tell you, as a shop owner, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as a business coach, as people that talk like you, talk to people in the industry at the highest levels to the lowest levels on a daily basis, this is the biggest threat right here. The mentality of us as people. Everything else can be figured out. We got to get this right if we're gonna be advanced in whatever we do in life, automotive or not. I just want to get that out there.
Boy, I don't know who could argue with that unless to the point, and I think it was Brian who said, the strong will survive, and we have to learn how to be strong. Hunt Demarest just put out an incredible episode called Rising Costs, Raising Prices. And it was so in your face, so straight up, that everybody's bitching about the fact that suppliers are raising prices on stuff, but they haven't stopped to think what they pay for eggs anymore. And there's this bad mentality out there that I can't do what life is treating me to do for my own business. And I think it's critical that we learn to be stronger. And I think a threat is ourselves. To your point, Greg, the threat is to ourselves because we don't want to learn. We don't want to pay attention to everything around us. We don't want to go out and talk to our younger folks and tell them this is one of the most incredibly greatest skilled trades ever. And work for me as a technology specialist. You love to work with your hands. Come on and become a mechanical specialist. Come to our industry. But we'd rather just sit back and complain about stuff and not do anything and have the lowest labor rate and try to eke by and give mama $100 in cash every week out of our left pocket that will end up buying a half a bag of groceries today, not a whole cart. So
Right.
I've heard some incredible stories about that. In fact, Hunt covered that. What does it take to buy a basket of groceries today, and why we're so afraid to raise prices and to charge the right margins. And that could be a threat. As we summarize this, I think we could go on for another incredible hour and have a discussion because you guys are brainiacs in my mind, and I am just so proud and happy to have you all here. I'd love to go around the room, but I think we really had one hell. Oh, look at that. We've got the signal, the show closing jingle. Just
That new car? That's new.
no, I don't know where that came from. I really don't. Who wants to admit it? It was theirs.
Colonel.
Thank you so much, Greg Bunch from President Aspen Auto Clinic, and of course, the president, founder of Transformers Institute, a 6-store chain out in Auto Care, Colorado Springs. Brian Sump, president, Avalon Motorsports, the German auto experts in the 5-store chain Urban Auto Care in Denver. And Andy Fiffick, president, Rad Air, complete car care and tire center, Cleveland 10-store franchise. Guys, this was great. I appreciate it. You guys did wonderful. I have to have you back, talk about more stuff that I think will change our industry.
Thank you,
Appreciate you
Carm.
being here.
Anytime, buddy.
Okay, guys, thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Guys, be good.
See you.
Bye-bye.